Humans spend months agonizing over major decisions, gathering data and building spreadsheets. Yet some of the most accurate conclusions we ever reach happen in a fraction of a second, before our conscious minds even realize what's going on. In the 1980s, the J. Paul Getty Museum acquired a nearly perfectly preserved Greek marble statue known as a Kouros. A team of scientists spent 14 months evaluating it using mass spectrometry. Mass spectrometry is a scientific technique that identifies the exact chemical makeup of a substance by measuring the mass of its individual molecules. After exhaustive testing, the scientists concluded the statue was an authentic antiquity. But when the world's top art historians finally saw the Kouros, they felt an immediate wave of intuitive repulsion. In a single glance, without looking at a single scientific chart, they recognized the statue was a modern fake.
To understand how a 2-second glance beat 14 months of science, we can look at a famous gambling experiment. Researchers gave players 4 decks of cards, 2 red, 2 blue, and asked them to draw cards to maximize their winnings. The red decks were rigged to drain the players' money, while the blue decks offered steady payouts. This chart tracks the players' conscious understanding of the game. It shows a slow, flat progression of guesses until about the 80th card drawn. That is exactly how long it took the players to logically figure out the underlying rules and explain why they should avoid the red decks. But the researchers also monitored the players' sweat glands to track their stress responses. By the 10th card, the players' hands began to sweat every time they reached for a red deck. Their unconscious minds had decoded the trap 70 cards before their logical brains caught up. Psychologists called this ability thin slicing. It is the process where our brain identifies massive, complex patterns based on incredibly narrow windows of experience. We possess a highly efficient background processor. It continuously sifts through the environment, throws out irrelevant details, and accurately decodes the world long before our conscious minds are aware of it. Because this background processor operates entirely behind a locked door in our minds, we cannot monitor how it works. That becomes a serious problem when the societal data feeding that processor is flawed. In 1920, American voters elected Warren G. Harding as president, largely because he looked like a strong, capable leader. He was tall, dark, and handsome, and voters unconsciously equated those superficial physical traits with high competence. He is now widely considered one of the worst presidents in U.S. history. Modern researchers measure this phenomenon using the implicit association test, or IAT. The IAT is a psychological assessment that measures the speed at which people pair different concepts together, revealing automatic underlying biases. The results consistently show that our unconscious minds harbor deep prejudices regarding race, gender, and height, regardless of our stated moral beliefs. These split-second biases dictate actual behavior. When researchers sent a group of black and white testers with identical resumes to negotiate for cars in Chicago, salesmen consistently offered significantly worse financial deals to the minority buyers, based entirely on split-second assessments. Rapid cognition is a highly vulnerable system.
It is easily corrupted by deeply ingrained societal prejudice, leading to wildly inaccurate and discriminatory decisions. Fixing our corrupted instincts requires a counterintuitive approach. We generally assume that having more information leads to better choices. The reality is that restricting the flow of information often produces far superior results. During the Millennium Challenge military war games in 2002, General Paul Van Riper defeated a vastly superior, highly computerized fleet. Instead of relying on overwhelming data streams and constant analysis, he relied on structured spontaneity, giving his officers simple rules and letting their instincts guide the fight. We see this exact dynamic in medicine. For years, emergency room doctors at Chicago's Cook County Hospital tried to diagnose heart attacks by gathering exhaustive patient backgrounds. They collected data on age, weight, diet, and family history, which routinely overwhelmed the decision-makers and led to misdiagnoses. This animated diagram illustrates how the hospitals solved the problem. They implemented a simple algorithm that actively ignored the patient's dense medical history. By forcing the doctors to focus entirely on just 3 specific vital signs, their diagnostic accuracy improved dramatically. This is the information paradox. In complex environments, feeding the brain excessive data paralyzes the unconscious. Restricting data strips away the noise and allows the correct pattern to naturally emerge. Even if we restrict information, our snap judgments have an ultimate vulnerability. When we face extreme life-or-death time constraints, the entire system can collapse. In high-stress scenarios, the human heart rate skyrockets past 145 beats per minute. At this level of extreme physiological arousal, humans lose their peripheral vision, their complex motor skills degrade, and they suffer from temporary mind blindness, a complete inability to accurately read the facial expressions and intentions of others. In 1999, 4 New York police officers confronted a man named Amadou Diallo in a dark vestibule. Starved of time and highly stressed, the officers suffered a massive breakdown in rapid cognition. They misread Diallo pulling a black wallet as drawing a gun, resulting in a fatal shooting. Unchecked rapid cognition fails completely when the brain is starved of both time and physiological calm. If our instincts are easily overwhelmed by stress and deeply vulnerable to societal bias, organizations must find ways to actively protect their decision-makers from themselves. For decades, the classical music world had a massive demographic problem. Orchestras were almost entirely male, a direct result of conductors relying on unconscious gender biases during the audition process. The solution was entirely environmental. Orchestras began placing a physical screen between the judging committee and the performing musicians, editing out all visual cues so the judges could only hear the music. Removing the visual triggers didn't change the physical structure of the judges' brains, nor did it erase their ingrained biases. It simply blocked the corrupted data from entering the system, allowing their unbiased rapid cognition to function flawlessly. To harness the power of our snap judgments, we cannot simply trust our guts. We must actively design our environments to edit out the noise, restrict the flow of bad data, and protect our instincts.